Alors, bonsoir. Good evening, everyone. We'll get started. Roll call. We have Councillor Lauren is absent, may arrive later for personal reasons or may be absent. So we'll just play that one by ear. Otherwise, all members of council are present and accounted for. We'll start with the territorial land acknowledgement statement and moment of reflection.
So we acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Kanyen-Kahaka peoples. And we acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within.
Merci, conseiller Lalonde. Attendu que le Canada est formé sur les principes qui reconnaissent la suprématie de Dieu, la primauté du droit, prenons un moment de réflexion personnelle. Taking a shortcut. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras sait porter l'épée. Il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Merci. Alors, y a-t-il des additions, deletions or amendments for the agenda? Seeing, hearing none. So adoption of the agenda, motion to approve the agenda as presented. C'est beau. Merci. This is moved by Councillor Deakin, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. A call for the vote. Thank you. The agenda is adopted as presented. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing and hearing none. Alors, l'adoption des procès-verbaux. Procès-verbal de la séance extraordinaire du 24 octobre 2024. Procès-verbal de la séance extraordinaire du 25 octobre 2024. Procès-verbal de la séance ordinaire du 28 octobre 2024. Motion to approve the following minutes as presented, and this is moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. Call for the vote. And that's passed. Thank you. Presentations, we have none. Delegations, we have none. And we move pour point par consentement. Alors, tous les articles énumérés sous la rubrique articles faisant l'objet d'un consentement seront acceptés par une résolution. Ces articles requièrent un vote majoritaire et ne doivent pas faire l'objet d'une discussion séparée, à moins qu'une demande à cet effet est faite avant que le Conseil vote sur la résolution. Les articles séparés doivent être examinés immédiatement par la suite. So, motion pour que tous les documents énumérés sous les points de consentement soient reçus tels que présentés. And that is moved by Councillor Lalonde. Seconded by Councillor Deakin. Call for the vote. All in favor, thank you. seconde, je me rattrape sur mes papiers. All right. Alors, numéro 11, reports from departments and council. 11A, bylaw to exempt certain lands from part lot control, PD 2024, PD 2024, and property known as 1518 Quarry Russell. Monsieur Bourgon, quelque chose à rajouter là-dessus?
Non, le règlement va se retrouver à la section de règlement.
OK, parfait. Est-ce qu'on a des questions, commentaires, membres du conseil? Non? OK. 11B, Official Plan Amendment, Block 65, Plan 50, M375, vacant lot on LaBelle Street, Emblem, Report PD 2024-30. Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add on that?
Non, aucun commentaire.
OK. Moi, j'aurais juste une petite question. Ça a à voir avec le développement à Saint-Augustin, c'est ça, oui? Non, je me trompe. Je suis un petit peu à l'avance. Merci. C'est bon. Commentaire, conseil, membre du conseil? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah. Following up on Mike Walsh's comments in the report, when the area of Richelieu, Castelbeau, and Heritage converted to the sewers, and was part of the part of that was funded by the developer for the LaBelle Street area. Question: if one of those lots or areas was subdivided, the fees paid by the individual subdividing, the additional fees, were to be shared by the property owners that funded the original sewage system in the area. Does this fall in that domain where any monies would be shared?
Monsieur Bourgon?
Again, that question and answer is not related to the amendment itself, to the official plan. But like I mentioned to Mr. Walsh and the public that night, yes, it would be reviewed for that specific split, but will be towards the sub-developer of the entire subdivision.
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Armstrong, follow up?
Yeah. How long would you envision that to be?
Monsieur Bourgon?
I don't have any specific ETA at this time, but I certainly can come back to council to give a better time frame for that revision.
Okay. Because certainly it's...
Just through me, sir.
Yes, sir.
So go ahead.
It's certainly something that's on my agenda, not only because I'm part of that area, but people are having their say, what does this mean for us?
Certainly. So, Monsieur Bourgon, you can come back to us with the...
Yeah, and again, it's just to make clear that it's not really, like, it's a
Yeah,
side,
it's a request,
side
yeah,
thing
yeah.
For the amendment.
Any further questions or comments on this item? Seeing, hearing none. Okay, so moving to item C, Official Plan Amendment, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Saint Marie Road, Emblem Report PD 2024-35. Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add?
Non, rien ajouté.
No? Questions, comments, members of council? I believe this is where the library is going, right? This is for the library?
Yeah, in part, yes.
Okay. No questions, no comments? No? Perfect. Okay, moving along. Item D, zoning bylaw amendment, removal of holding symbol plan of subdivision part of Lot 9, Concession 8, lots 1 to 67 and blocks 69 to 75, Rochon Land Subdivisions, Emblem Report PD 2024-38. This is the one that's on off Saint-Augustin. Alors, Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add on that?
Non, ça c'est un changement de zonage, là, dans le fond, pour enlever le holding, pour permettre aux développeurs là, de pouvoir
Avancer sur
avancer
le
le projet.
OK. Questions, commentaires, membres du conseil? Non? Moi, j'avais une question qui est juste reliée un petit peu indirectement à ça. Je voulais juste savoir, est-ce que le développeur va rajouter ou est-ce qu'il y a une demande pour qu'on rajoute des trottoirs sur Saint-Augustin maintenant qu'il y aura plus de trafic, là?
La demande avait été approuvée par le conseil là, lors des conditions pour la subdivision.
OK, alors ça, c'est déjà planifié. et tout.
Exactement, oui.
L'autre chose, j'aimerais juste une dernière petite question reliée au trafic qu'il va y avoir maintenant. Est-ce qu'on va rajouter un stop là, à l'entrée de, je pense que c'est la rue Sam puis Saint-Augustin?
À ce moment-ci, non.
OK,
Mais il y aura une voie de virage qui est prévue
OK,
pour accéder à la subdivision.
OK, merci. OK, moving to item E. Adoption du budget 2025, rapport CSA SFS 2024-20. Moi, j'aimerais demander that we pull this item to discuss it separately. D'accord, Madame Camille-Laflamme? Alors, we'll discuss that on its own. I think it merits that. Item F, Community Grants and Contributions, Report PR 2024-10. PR 2024-10 Community Grants Contribution, and so this is Madame Guiton. Anything to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. No, not at this point. It's a recurring grant application from the Comité de Loisirs in Limoges, and they do a food drive guignolé every year. And as you're probably all aware, the demand is increasing every year. So we gave $1,000 last year. This year they've requested $1,500, and we feel comfortable in allowing the $1,500. And just to add that Nation Township will also be giving $2,000.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments, members of council?
And if you
Councilor
could,
Lalonde?
through the mayor, remind us that this is un loisir qui est organisé à Limoges. This is through a local
That's right. The Comité de Loisirs.
comité de loisirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Et ça desserve la communauté de Limoges au complet, ce qui
Limoges,
consiste de
so-
Russell
so,
Township.
so it's Russell and Nation.
OK.
Yeah.
Formidable. OK, so that's good. Alors, so that's it. Item 12, reports from investigator ombudsman. We have none. Number 13, notice of motions. We have none. 14, question period on meeting of the day. Any questions? Question? Just your name. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to read something? It's not on my, just a second. OK. 2 petites secondes. Alors, les questions doivent porter sur un sujet sur l'ordre du jour. Avant de poser une question, inscrire votre nom et votre adresse sur la feuille d'inscription. Si vous souhaitez recevoir une réponse du conseil ou du personnel, laissez un numéro de téléphone ou un courriel. Annoncez uniquement votre nom avant de poser vos questions. Clause de responsabilité, en posant des questions lors des réunions de conseil, vous consentez à faire partie de la diffusion en direct de l'enregistrement officiel public des délibérations. I said this all in French because that's the only place I have it in
It's all
French.
good. I
It's
speak
all
both.
good? You're good? Okay. All right. Thanks.
Julian Hunt, caster. Quick question. The grant, was that for 500 or 1,500? Because that said 500.
Sure. So I'll clarify that. So the request for the grant was for $2,000. It was for $1,500. Last year it was $1,000. The year before that it was $500. No, Madame
Not
Guittard?
quite.
Not quite? Okay.
Sorry. No, we had pre-approved during the budget sessions last year in 2024. For budget 2024, we had pre-approved $1,000. So when a community group wants more than what it is pre-approved, we have to come to council. So we are requesting a $500
Increase.
extra to the 1,000, which will total 1,500.
Second question. I listened to all the budget discussions, and that was great for explaining where all the money had to come from and why we couldn't make cuts in certain places. But for the fixed water and sewer costs and the rate costs, they're a lot higher than inflation rates. I'm just wondering if the public could get some clarification on why the increases are so high this year.
Sure, absolutely. And Monsieur Bourgon, Monsieur Dagenet, if you can clarify if I'm wrong on this, but I know that the construction index and inflation are not exactly the same. And we are, in our asset management, one of the biggest issues is replacement costs and having money aside to deal with issues as they arise. And so we have a gap right now in what we need versus what we have. And because the cost has gone up so dramatically over the last few years, above what we typically deal with inflation, especially on the construction side, we have to play catch up. Monsieur Dagenet, am I in the ballpark?
Yes, you explained this situation pretty well. It's the majority of the increase was for the asset management reserve, so exactly for future.
For the future. So what's interesting, what's important to kind of notify here is that that money that's being collected today is not money that's being used this year necessarily, but it's there to replace. So we've all seen the issue that happened in Calgary, for example, main water break or something. The money to make sure that it doesn't happen and to keep up with our infrastructure is what we're making sure that we have on hand to do the proper upgrading in time.
So it's a catch up for that department, and we won't be expecting that every year.
Well, that's a great question. That's a great follow-up question. So right now we are in the midst of doing an asset management plan update. In other words, looking at what do we have in terms of assets, including all the underground assets, and seeing what the value is to replace those. And so I think in January or something, we're supposed to have an update on the value. And then based on the plan we have right now, and the plan we have that was presented by Monsieur Dagenet or Monsieur Godin, is to increase the amount that we set aside by 2% per year, with the idea to, within 6 years, meet with the requirement that we have. But that's a bit of a forecast because we don't know for sure what the true value is today. That plan that's coming through is going to give us a little more clarity. But I'll defer to Monsieur Dagenet to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Okay. Okay, Councillor Deacon.
Just want to make sure that we're clarifying the difference between the fixed rates for water and sewer, which are user-based, and the 2% that you mentioned.
Oh, that's a good point,
Thanks.
yes. But the 2% plan is also part of the fixed rates, right?
Yes, the strategy we want to put in place is to be able to get to our annual requirement in 6 years. So for all the departments that are financed through taxation, well, that's the 2% that we want to increase per year. For the user fee departments that are financed with user fee, it's not as simple as a percentage. We kind of put the gap, like, we divided the gap in 6 years, so we're planning on increasing the user fee the same equal amount for the next 6 years. So
Okay. Does that
Does
clarify?
that mean that we're going to see an 18 to 19% increase to the fixed costs every year for the next 6 years?
Monsieur Dagenet?
not exactly, because it was maybe about 50% of the increase that was due because of asset management. So the rest was just the operational increase, normal yearly increase. So we could see a 9 to 10% increase for the next 6 years,
Okay.
just for asset management. But this strategy will be explained in more details when we'll present the report. It's actually in the next council meeting, so
Okay.
on the 25th.
25th, yeah. Mr. Hunt, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Bass.
Good evening, Mr. Bass.
Good evening. I'm just wondering, did we ever get a final amount on how much our taxes were going to be going up this year, next year?
So, Mr. Bass, we're going to finalize that decision tonight. So the first draft of the budget came in. There was an amount there, and what's being proposed tonight is a 9.6, but there are still discussions that will be had. So by the end of tonight, we should have an idea what that's going to look like.
Okay. And I was wondering, how much of the increase is actually going to be going towards the sports complex?
So the increase every year, the sports complex we have, and feel free to jump in here, Monsieur Godin, Monsieur Dagenet, there is no extra money there's not a new funding plan for the rec complex. Everything that we've been doing since 2019 is steady. So we've had an escalating 1% each year that goes towards the rec complex, but that has not changed. Just because the shovel went in ground this year, there's no big bump of taxes this year that you haven't seen in the last 5 years. It's just been a steady increase over the last 5 years.
Okay. As a taxpayer, I'm going to have to dish out or cut back on certain things in my life to pay these extra taxes that the township has insisted that I must pay. I'm wondering, what has the township actually given up for the residents of Russell?
So, Mr. Bass, I don't think I can answer that question other than to ask you a same question. Is there anything in your life where you've paid less in the last 2 or 3 years? Everything goes up in price. I mean, I'm not sure what you're trying to get at, but...
Well, because as I'm just going to use this as an example. We're talking about affordable housing in Russell, and which is, I think, is a good idea. But you are now forcing people to pay higher taxes, I mean, which may cause them not to be able to afford their houses anymore. Which means we need more affordable housing.
Yeah,
So that's why I'm kind of wondering, like, is the township giving up anything? And one of the things that I find is a little bit unfair is that as a resident, I have to manage to serve my own meal before I come to a meeting. Whereas I've heard that the people on the
What's your
council,
question?
do you actually get a free meal before every council meeting?
Staff that work here from the morning all the way to the evening, and councillors have access to a meal. That's been like that for I don't know how many years. I've been here since 2018, and they've been doing that well before that. I mean, the staff
Okay,
come
and so
here
how
at
much
9
is that
o'clock.
meal each night?
I'm not sure that I have an answer for you. That's not part of the agenda. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So thank you. That's not part
But
of the
isn't
agenda.
that budget?
It's not part of the budget, no. It's not part of our budget discussion this evening.
Well, I think it's part of the budget, sorry to tell you that.
Well, so it's a policy that there is a meal for staff when they work all day and the whole evening to be here for you tonight, and I'll stop it at that. I'm not going to answer any further questions around that. Thank you, Mr. Bass, for your time. Councillor Lalonde?
Yeah, I just maybe would like to add to the comment that was made on affordable housing and how taxes now with what might be proposed, whether it's 11% or 9% or some other percentage, worsens that situation. It's not quite the case. If we're to come up with something between 8 and 9%, for instance, just as an example, we're talking about an extra $225, $230, $240 a year equivalent per taxpayer per household. That's not where the situation is with affordable housing. Anybody could afford to pay maybe a few $100s more a year, but if they can't get into an apartment because they can't get it for under $1,500 or $1,600 a year, that's a whole different issue. The increase in tax doesn't make that unattainable. And what is going to make it attainable, hopefully when we get into our housing action plan, is going to be work with the province, with the government. There's a whole bunch of areas and issues that they have to be involved in as well here, rent geared to income. This is all, these are initiatives that are legislated by government, and if we don't get more relief there, we won't be able to do much if they're not going to recognize what an apartment costs in this area and the requirement to bridge the gap between the two. So I wouldn't, as someone who has a heart for affordable housing, along with other councillors here, the issue now is not going to be whether taxes going up by $220 a year worsens necessarily the situation on affordable housing. There's some much bigger steps that have to take place and changes that have to be made beyond just that bit of taxation increase.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lalonde. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Is it good? Nope, just push the button there.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hi there. Bylaw enforcement, is that a net revenue to the township, or is it a neutral, meant to be neutral? And the budget for bylaws enforcement, is that increasing, or is for any particular reason?
So that's a very
Where do I see that?
wide
Where do I
open
see the
question.
numbers for that, for the operation of bylaws?
That's right in the budget. Everything is there
Okay.
available for you.
Okay. And is that considered to be revenue neutral, or is it a revenue generator?
Well, no, it's not a revenue, it's an expense account. Like it's a cost of having a municipality
Okay.
is to have a bylaw department that enforces bylaw.
And have you
And
remained the same
There
number
are
of
some
people?
revenues that
Yeah.
come from that account. I would encourage you to go take a look at that budget.
Okay.
If you have a specific questions around that specific department, feel free to ask.
Sure.
But there are expenses and there are revenues on that account.
It's not meant to be a revenue generator.
We don't look to them to bring us a certain required contribution margin, no.
And when you refer to the average tax increase of 500, I believe you mentioned $542 or $245?
Right
Here?
here, look at me here for that.
Sorry.
What's the question?
When you refer to the average
Yeah,
tax
what-
increase proposed or on the books, where do you get that number?
Sure. So, Monsieur Dagenet, so the average tax increase is based on and that's an interesting one because a lot of people misunderstand that one. So, Monsieur Dagenet, if you can explain that.
The township average household assessment value here in the township of Russell is $352,000.
Okay, before you put any question, before you
Okay.
react to that, let me explain to you that is how that's the value of MPAC. It doesn't mean that your house is worth more or less. It doesn't matter. So, Monsieur Dagenet, can you explain that? Because I had the same reaction as
Thank you.
well. Just so you know, Monsieur Dagenet, if you can explain.
Yeah, it's based on an assessment that was done by MPAC in 2017.
That's correct. So we all know that the values have increased, but it doesn't impact. It doesn't change the fact that it's just once they update their assessment, our ratio of taxation will change, but it will not change the amount that we're collecting, if that makes any sense to you.
That you're collecting, or who else is collecting this?
That is collecting. Monsieur Dagenet?
Yes, well, just give an example. Someone that pays about $4,000 in tax per year, and that includes the county's portion and the school board's portion. It's the assessment value to that property is around $333,000. So it gives you an idea that that 350,000, like our house right now are valued way higher than 352,000, but that's from an assessment that was done in 2007.
Yeah, so that assessment gives us a ratio for collecting, but the amount that's being budgeted is really what, and that's why when you give that value per 300,000, per the average value, that's the current value assessed in a community. So, and then if you go back to the 4,000, or let's say out of $1,000 that I pay on my tax bill, what percentage goes to the municipality? What percentage goes to on average? Do you have that?
I don't have that offhand.
Mr. Gadet?
Merci, Monsieur Maire. We don't have the exact numbers, but the municipal portion for Township of Russell on the bill is maybe around between 35 and 40%.
Yeah.
The rest is distributed to the county.
So that increase that we're going to finish on tonight at some point, assuming we have an approved budget tonight, is the increase of that portion of your taxes. So the 40% of your tax bill. And so that 40% is the impacted amount.
So could I assume that the average number that's been given of $245 a year, I don't know anybody who has a house that's being taxed at the rate that was just talked about. If you compound this year over year, by the 2032, I think you said we'd break even on the Sportsplex, that means that we're going to be compounding this 9% increase over the next 7, 8 years?
No, I'm not sure that we can say that. No. Monsieur Dagenet, I don't think I fully understand, but it's not a question of
I'm referring to
compounding.
the-
What we were
Yeah.
compounding for the rec complex is a 1% strategy, 1% per year, correct?
It's 1% per year, and that was put in place in 2018, and it's going to finish in 2028.
Yeah, and that's it.
It's compounded, of course.
Yeah, but that 1% has been happening since 2018. There's nothing new. This year, the big changes this year are the OPP and us coming to terms with the infrastructure asset management. That's the biggest change.
So when you say infrastructure asset management, you don't mean the Sportsplex?
Well, the asset management and the Sportsplex are two different things. The
Okay.
Sportsplex is a build. Asset management is putting money aside for existing infrastructure.
Okay.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, just may if I put it this way, the recreation complex is a new capital asset that we do not yet have, we have not yet fully realized. Asset management is for recapitalization when, during the lifespan of those assets. So once we get as I understand it, once we get the rec complex online, then we will have to start contributing to asset management for that rec complex, as we do for the sewers that go underneath our streets.
That's correct.
Is that
Thank you.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so moving to item 12. Rapport d'un investigateur ou de l'Ombudsman, il n'y en a pas. Numéro 13, avis de motion, on n'en a pas. Non, j'ai fait ça déjà, excusez. 15, résolution. Okay, so motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item 11, reports from departments and councils and committee. I need a mover to put it on the table. That's moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Deakin. It is on the table, so I would like an amendment to remove item E. I need a mover to remove item E, moved by Councillor Deakin, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. Call for the vote. Okay, item E is removed. So now that is removed. Now I'll call for a vote on all the items except for E. And that is, so I'll call for the vote. All four. Thank you. And now we move to item E. All right, so 2025 Budget Adoption Report CSAS FS 2024-20. I need a mover to put that on the table. Or is it on the table already, Madame Laflamme? No, so a mover to put it on the table. Conseiller Lalonde, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. So it is on the table. First of all, anything to add, Monsieur Dagenet, Monsieur Godin?
Oui, bonsoir, chers membres du Conseil. Avant d'entrer dans les détails du rapport, je souhaite d'abord exprimer ma gratitude envers tous les départements de la municipalité. Ces derniers mois, chaque équipe a travaillé fort pour contribuer à l'élaboration d'un budget équilibré, malgré les nombreux défis auxquels nous sommes confrontés. Je tiens également à remercier tout particulièrement l'équipe des finances qui a fait preuve d'un engagement exceptionnel. En plus de s'assurer que chaque ajustement nécessaire soit intégré dans le budget, elle a amené des analyses approfondies pour limiter autant que possible l'impact financier sur nos résidents. Le budget 2025 reflète la réalité actuelle. Les augmentations des coûts dans tous les secteurs au cours des dernières années commencent à nous rattraper. Afin de maintenir la même qualité de service pour nos résidents, il est nécessaire d'envisager une augmentation des taxes plus élevée que les années précédentes. Excusez-moi. Plusieurs exemples ont été présentés pour illustrer cette situation au cours des dernières semaines, notamment des tableaux comparant nos augmentations de taxes des dernières années aux indices des prix de la consommation et au coût des matériaux de construction. Lors des séances de travail budgétaire des 24 et 25 octobre, le Conseil a demandé à l'administration de revoir certains éléments afin de ramener l'augmentation de la taxation en dessous de la barre des 10 %. Après consultation, l'administration a proposé une série de réductions budgétaires, ce qui a permis de réduire l'augmentation à 9,63 % À la suite de ces modifications, le Conseil a donné la directive à l'administration d'apporter les ajustements nécessaires et de présenter une seconde version du budget pour l'adoption lors de la rencontre de ce soir. Depuis cette rencontre, de nouvelles informations ont été reçues, notamment les revenus de croissance anticipés de la municipalité qui s'avèrent plus élevés que prévu. Nous avons décidé d'affecter ces nouveaux revenus à la stratégie on-call des pompiers volontaires, précédemment financée par une réserve. Compte tenu des bienfaits anticipés de cette stratégie pour notre service des incendies, l'utilisation d'une réserve pour son financement n'est pas la meilleure approche, car cela ne ferait que repousser l'augmentation des taxes à l'an prochain. De plus, une augmentation de la subvention OMPF de 14 000 permet de ramener le pourcentage d'augmentation à 9,6 % au lieu de 9,63 %. Une autre information récente concerne la possibilité que les comtés unis de Prescott et Russell éliminent le programme PRAC et redirigent les fonds vers les municipalités locales. Pour la municipalité de Russell, cette modification pourrait générer un revenu unique de 142 590 en plus d'un revenu annuel de 121 405 En intégrant ces nouveaux revenus dans notre stratégie de gestion des actifs, il serait possible de limiter l'augmentation annuelle de la contribution des revenus de taxation à 1 % en 2025 au lieu de 2 %. Cette approche réduirait ainsi l'augmentation de la taxation pour 2025 à 8,6 % au lieu de 9,6 %. Avec cette augmentation de 8,6 % une propriété d'une valeur moyenne de 352 000 dans notre municipalité verrait une hausse de taxation de 185 en 2025. Pour conclure, je crois fermement que ce budget, avec une augmentation de taxation de 8,6 % est une proposition gagnant-gagnant pour tous. Si l'on exclut l'augmentation de 2,9 % pour les services de police, 1 % pour la stratégie du complexe récréatif et 1 % pour la stratégie d'asset management, il ne reste qu'une augmentation de 3,7 % pour les besoins généraux de la municipalité. Un pourcentage très raisonnable compte tenu de toutes les hausses auxquelles nous faisons face depuis la pandémie. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, M. Dagenet. Questions, commentaires, membres du Conseil? Councillor Armstrong?
Yes. I have 3 points I'd like to raise, but I'll raise them one at a time and let everybody else go through. The first one concerns Schedule E, the user fees. Just a question here, do our user fees cover the actual costs of the services provided? And are there differences between like water and sewer rates, ice rental rates, and others? So
So,
The arenas are generally used by clubs and others who are paying users.
yeah, we do have free skate ice times as well and so on for the residents.
But it's very minor
Yeah.
compared to the total. So do those ice rates cover the actual costs?
Okay, well,
Or
sir.
is there a subsidization by
Sure.
taxation?
I do believe there is a subsidization. Madame Guittard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. What I think it's been known that minor sports are being subsidized by the township. It's a municipal facility, and that's the way,
Yeah,
it's the
not a-
way to make sports accessible to our minors.
Yeah,
The adult fee is very close to recovery. It is not completely recovered, but it's very close. And also for the junior C hockey, that's also subsidized. But it's been known to be like that for years.
thank you. Follow-up, Councillor Armstrong, on that particular one?
No, that's fine for now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Deacon?
Yeah, my first comment was just on the accessibility piece because Monsieur Dagenet gave a really great breakdown, percentage by percentage, at the end of his remarks, and I was wondering if he would be able to say that in English as well. You mentioned percent by percent and where we were landing in terms of after all of those strategies were in place.
Monsieur Dagenet, alors, I think we're at 8.6%. Like, are you looking for him to?
I guess if I may, so it would be 1% for the rec complex.
Sure, we'll let Monsieur Dagenet.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Monsieur
Yeah,
Dagenet?
so what I mentioned is that at the end, what the increase in taxation could be 8.6%. So in that 8.6%, we would see there's a 2.9%, 2.9% that's for the OPP. There's a 1% that goes to the strategy that's in place for the rec complex. There's also 1% that goes to the strategy for asset management. So that's a total of 4.9%. So the rest, the remaining is 3.7%. That would go towards all the rest of the departments of the township.
Thank you.
So we feel that 3.7% is really reasonable.
Thank you.
If we compare with all the increase that we had in the last couple of years.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Dagenet. Follow-up, Councillor Deacon?
I did disagree with Monsieur Dagenet on one point, which was his comment about this being win-win. I think that this is a really, really difficult year, and I just want to acknowledge that nobody here feels like they're winning tonight. We removed several things. We deferred several things from the budget. Both the administration and council was working hard and has been working hard these last couple of weeks in particular to find creative solutions, going to the counties, making sure that we're getting information from the OPP on just what is the extent of that bill coming through, and are we going to continue seeing that? The wins here that I see is in that hard work that everyone's been doing, but I don't want to sugarcoat this. This is a really difficult budget year. I did have a couple of questions on the PRAC piece and the possibility of bringing us down from that 9.6 to 8.6. There's a comment, it's written in the report, if we move forward with this approach, if in the future the UCPR were to abolish this program, PRAC, then those funds would need to, which my understanding is that those come from taxation, but at the county tax rate.
That's correct.
Correct? So again, as a taxpayer, there's many of us in the room, we're looking at that and we're saying, okay, well, that's just tax out from there and into the municipality of Russell. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just get some more clarity on what the PRAC fund is for. Is it specifically, does it exist for the asset management infrastructure piece that we're looking at, or and what was the conversation at the counties? It hasn't been abolished yet, if I understand.
So great questions. Thank you, Councillor Deacon. So that particular fund was born, I think, in the last term of council or early in this term. I think it was at the last term of county council. And the idea behind it was to put money aside to help municipalities with borrowing capacities on large infrastructure projects that would support economic development. So if I look here in our municipality, the idea would be to, let's say, when we were discussing water sewer in the industrial park, that they could come in and help us get more borrowing capacity through this fund to support these kind of developments that really benefit the entire United Counties. So that was the general idea behind it, and it was supposed to be using that same approach that we used for our rec complex, where it was supposed to be 1% added each year on top of each other. It's never worked that way. They just kept putting 1% in, and so not compounding it. And so at this stage, that fund, it was growing very slowly, and it didn't really serve that purpose. And so county council decided in the last meeting, when we're having these difficult discussions as we are here tonight, to say, is there really value in that? And could we give that back into the roads, funding that goes back to the municipalities? And so that's where the regular 1% would go. And then what was accumulated in the fund would be a one-time amount, which Monsieur Dagenet was referring to. And so in terms of how is that to realize, so there was a vote at the last meeting to give direction to do that. It's being presented tomorrow, as a matter of fact, in the budget, second budget discussion. And so the assumption is the county council already voted to move in that direction. There is obviously a possibility that it could, for some reason, tomorrow not go through, but I'm pretty sure that it will, based on the discussion around the table at the time. I mean, everyone was for it, or just about everyone was for it. Councillor Deacon, follow up?
And just so that I understand what the motion was, to move forward with the conversation at the counties, that's for this one-time piece and not the abolishment of the PRAC altogether.
It was for the abolishment of the PRAC, and that 1% be moved into the roads allocation. Is that correct? In terms of the 1%, Monsieur Dagenet?
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a road subsidy that comes back from United Counties. So they have a fund they give us every year for roads work, and so that 1% is going back in there. So that 1% will continue.
Okay. I have another.
Yes.
Just on the different piece do we have more clarity at this point? I know that there was supposed to be a webinar with the OPP. Do we have more clarity about whether this year's 2.9% is a one-time hit, or whether, we're looking at increases like that for the coming years as well?
Thank you. Great question. So we just had the Police Service Board meeting last week. The presentation got delayed, and we made it a very strong point saying that we need that presentation. So as of right now, we don't know. Conseiller Lalonde.
Yeah, a few comments. I appreciate what staff has done here, and I understand what the meaning of maybe the win-win was, or how it was further articulated by Councillor Deacon. I think in that, for me, in that sense, it's the developments of the last few days with what's happened at the UCPR and the decision to maybe undo the PRAC almost seems providential to me. If I understand through the option for the 8.6. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago. There's been a lot of cuts made, and they've been difficult ones. I had mentioned that I myself had hoped to maybe be able to put some money away in reserve for affordable housing. We're not able to do that. We're not able to get at all the road repair rehabilitation that we would have liked to have done, except for what will be out on Burton. So there's been a lot of difficult decisions made, but I think really staff has done as much as can be done in the circumstances. And, you know, I can't get away from this 2.9%, certainly with the police budget, the impact that has on us. That being said, what I'm seeing now, and with the redistribution of the funds, the one-time 142,590, and then what is expected to be 121,405 coming back each year for the next few years, at least for the coming year. I guess I just have a question. I'm certainly interested in the 8.6. It's interesting because it was a number that one of our members of council had in mind when we were more up at the higher end of things a few weeks ago, and the fact that we can get down to that number, certainly a number I would support by means of these new developments with the UCPR, and I hope, as the mayor said, that tomorrow will just be a formality that it will be approved. I guess I have one question maybe, is that if I take the 142,590 and add it to the 121,405, isn't that worth more than a percentage point? I used to think that a percentage point in taxation amounted to about 190,000, and these two together would come out to more than that. So I would have thought if we're taking the one-time refund or payment of the 142 and the 121, that we would actually only need to send something like 0.8% into the infrastructure reserve rather than the full 1%. So if I could just get clarity on that, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. So Monsieur Dagenet, Monsieur Godin, if you want to clarify that, but if I understand correctly, whatever we reduce this year, we still have to bring it back next year. And so that's the scary part on that. But clarification, it does amount to more than 1%. So is that a possibility?
Well, for this year, for 25, we would end up with more than, we wouldn't have enough for our, to get to our annual requirement. But we would have more than if we would only increase the taxation by 2%. Because like you said, if you add 142,000 with 121,000, you get 263,000. So that's more than 1%, that it's 185,000. But it's a one-time amount. So when we'll get to 26, we're only gonna receive the 121,000 that's yearly. So what we want is to have enough money every year to get to our annual requirement. So that's why, yes, in 25, we have a little bit more breathing room. We'll be closer to our annual requirement than what the strategy was proposing, but we're still under our annual requirement, so there's still gonna be some backlogs that are gonna get created in 25, but less than what the strategy was proposing.
Follow-up, Councillor Lalonde?
Yeah, so that overage, and with the 1% that was already going in, will allow you to put the 2% in for infrastructure reserve this year, and will allow at the same time to achieve this year a 8.6% tax increase only.
Can I just get
Is that
quiet in the room, please? Excuse me, Councillor Lalonde.
I just want to be sure that I'm clear on that.
Monsieur Dagenet?
Yes, that's it.
Councillor Lalonde?
Okay, so I'm going to have, not hope, hope is good, but I have strong faith in staff that in 2025, we will achieve some levels of efficiency that will help us get closer to where we'll need to be ready for 2026. But in the meantime, I have to support the notion of the 8.6 with this one-time contribution of the 142,590 and the 121,405 that gives us, if we put it out the way it's proposed, will generate or yield a further decrease of 1% from the 9.6 to get us to the 8.6. I think we have to do that this year. I think the circumstances warrant it. And it's not to push the ball down the field for next year. We know what's waiting for us next year, but we have the opportunity this year in a situation where we have some totally unexpected and very significant tax increase issues resulting from OPP, that I think this is the right and reasonable thing to do while still allowing us to put that 2% into the infrastructure reserve. So I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's almost providential that this money has come along and that the decision is being made by the UCPR to return one-time amounts along with the 1% next year to the municipalities when, in fact, we need it the most.
Merci, Conseiller Lalonde. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I'd just like to focus on Schedule H, the asset management strategy. And I was just want to confirm, looking out for your projections to 2030, do I see that we may be in a slight deficit position in our asset management requirements in 2030 following the plan we have now? Because I notice it's a negative 34,572 at the bottom of that column. Is that correct?
Monsieur Dagenet, I thought it was a little surplus that we have.
Yeah, it's the contrary.
Yeah.
We're doing a deficit until 2030. So,
Yeah.
like in
We're catching
29,
up.
we have a deficit of 509,000. So in 2030, we're going to be doing a surplus of 34,572.
And that's based on the current expected value, and which we know is probably short of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my
Okay. Next question.
Yeah, the next question is just on our organization chart. Just wondering, how many employees do we expect as of next year? Because some of them are grouped together as a group of employees, like in the daycares, we have non-graduate educators, and there's just one. I'm assuming there's more than one of those in that block. But just what would be our total HR complement as of this budget that we're looking at now?
So just a clarification, Councillor Armstrong. So normally I think we look at FTEs, full-time equivalents.
Yep.
Obviously, they're all at different values. Are you just looking for the total FTEs we have?
I was just looking for the total FTEs. We have the pay bands.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. And you could, from the pay bands, you could see. But that's not my question. It was just approximately how many FTEs we would have next year.
So, Monsieur Godin, Monsieur Dagenet, I know I have a chart that I track over the last few years, the FTEs, because I'm always interested in that, but I don't have it here, Monsieur Dagenet.
Yes,
I think it's in
well,
the binder, yeah.
we wrote in the budget brief, it was mentioned we'll be at 172
Thank
for
you.
Okay.
25.
Okay.
Councillor Armstrong, any other
No,
questions?
that's it. Thank you very much.
You're comfortable with that? Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Deacon.
Anytime that a discussion around how many FTEs are at the township comes up, I do feel called to mention that there are many different departments, many different roles that are fully covered by user fees. And so if I could, because we're going there, how many of the daycare, how many of those 172 are daycare in the childcare?
Sure. Without putting you on the spot, Madame Guital, don't you have a little booklet in the back? You can just flip it up. It's okay. Merci. 38?
58.
58. Okay. 58.
you.
Thank you. Okay, any other?
And those 58 are all user fee funded.
That's right.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that's what I thought.
Any other questions pertaining to this item? Okay. Councillor Deacon.
I didn't say it earlier, so I just wanted to say, similar to what Conseiller Lalonde was mentioning, I'm in support of pursuing the other option if it's available to us when the counties vote on the PRAC to bring us down to 8.6.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, I have a proposer and a seconder to move to the second option on this, on the report, which is to reduce it further to 8.6 by using this fund. Is that correct? I have a mover and a seconder. Conseiller Lalonde moved that, seconded by Councillor Deacon. So I will call the vote for the amendment of this report. Is that correct? Is that the amendment of the report so that the report kind of directs to the 8.6?
Did the councillors wanted to include something with respect to including the additional anticipated revenue as well, or just change the 9.6 to 8.6?
Monsieur Godin, what would you need on your end, or Monsieur Dagenet?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. Well, given that we presented it as another option, we did prepare
A full motion?
another recommendation in case you,
Okay.
council went down that way. So we can put it on the screen and council can maybe
Please do,
discuss.
thank you. So members of council, if you can take a look at that. So that's moved by, so that amendment is, this is the amendment or the full motion?
Mr. Mayor, so the part that has been changed is only in the first paragraph,
Okay,
which starts with 8.6, and then the including, that's the part that was added in the first paragraph only.
okay, so I'm just going to ask for, so I've got a mover and a seconder on the amendment. I'm going to call for the vote for the amendment only, and so I call for the vote for the amendment, and that is passed. Questions and comments on now the amended motion that you see in front of you, the complete amendment. Questions, comments, anyone? Okay, so I'm going to call the vote on the amended motion. All four, or sorry, call for the vote, thank you. And that passes. Okay, thank you very much. Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Mayor. If it's okay, I'd like to say just a couple of words before.
Yeah, I was going to do that too. Oh,
Okay.
fair enough. Now that that we've passed, if that, yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll echo some of my colleague, Mr. Dagenet's comments. I'd like to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude to all my colleagues here at the table, as well as their teams. The effort and dedication that went into preparing this budget, it can't be overstated. A big thank you to council as well for your invaluable input and for the constructive working sessions that brought us to this point. We recognize that the increase included in this budget is higher than in previous years, but we firmly believe that they are necessary to maintain the high standards of service our community expects and deserves. The tough decisions made by council today will set us on a path towards a more sustainable, resilient, and thriving community, one that aligns with the long-term goals of our strategic plan. Un merci tout particulier à notre directeur de finances, M. Sébastien Dagenet, et à son équipe. C'était le premier budget pour Sébastien en tant que trésorier, et je tiens à souligner mon appréciation pour son éthique de travail exemplaire, son professionnalisme et sa persévérance. Donc, félicitations Sébastien. And thank you everyone.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Godin. I would like to echo on this side. I know that this is the hardest budget that I've had to go through. Since 2018, we've always had very relatively simple ones. We, as a matter of fact, wish we would have increased a little bit more on those at that time. But I think that we had some great questions, great debates. It is a tough one, no matter how you slice it. That 2.9 from the OPP will hurt. But again, I thank all the members of council and the staff for all the hard work and dedication to moving this forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Godin and your whole team. All right. Okay. 2 seconds here. We got caught up. I'll move to Okay, we move to bylaws. Motion that council approve bylaws 2024-091 to 2024-099 inclusively for the first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. Est-ce que je dois les lire? No.
No.
No, c'est beau. Okay, and this is moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Deakin. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I missed the mover seconder.
Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Deakin.
Thank you.
Item 17, new business reports, we have none. Number 18, other business presented by council members, we have none. Number 19, public consultations, we have none. Number 20, announcements. Any announcements that were not listed on here? Any members of council? I just wanted to publicly thank everyone that was involved in the Remembrance Day ceremonies. We had, I participated at two of them. I know Councillor Deakin also participated in Limoges. It's always nice to see all the residents come out and remember. This is such an important day to think and retrospect on all the sacrifices that are made by not only the service, the people that are in the service, in the military service, but their families as well. So thank you very much. We had a plan to amalgamate the services in Embrun and Russell. I apologize for that. I should know better. We had a plan to amalgamate those two ceremonies because of a lack of support. But during the ceremony in Embrun, we had a group come forward showing interest. I'm not going to mention any names yet because I want to make sure that everything is firmed up. But it looks like we'll be able to continue having an afternoon service in Embrun, which is really appreciated by a lot of members in our community that can't necessarily make the 11 o'clock one. So that's fantastic news. All right, 21 strategic discussion, we have none. 22 closed session, we have none. 23 confirming bylaw, that bylaw 2024.
100.
100, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of Russell Township at its regular council meeting held on November 12th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time. This is moved by Councillor Lalonde, seconded by Councillor Deakin. Call for the vote. Thank you. Our next regular public meeting of council will be held on Monday, November 25th, 2024. We are adjourned at the hour of 7:10. C'est beau? C'est beau? Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.